Jeeps are cool and all, but if I'm honestly going to live with an off-roader, there's better and more practical options out there. The Toyota 4Runner is one of the last stalwarts of the proper SUV, and there's a reason why they're still held in such regard. The midsize SUV. Many hate it due to its inefficiencies, and that's mainly due to them selling like hotcakes and replacing wagons and minivans as the de facto middle-class suburban housewife car of the 1990s and aughts. Eventually, they began to get phased out in favor of car-based crossovers, especially after the 2008 recession. While a crossover is more fuel efficient than a traditional SUV, they are often not as practical as one, or even a wagon or minivan. But some body-on-frame SUVs have stood the test of time. While the larger ones like the Chevrolet Tahoe and Ford Expedition transition towards being more of luxurious people movers, others capitalized on Jeep's ever-skyrocketing off-road in popularity. While some longtime SUVs like the Pathfinder came out of the recession as a third-row minivan alternative, for better or worse, others like the Toyota 4Runner doubled down on their truck-based underpinnings. The 2008 recession killed a lot of the truck-based SUVs. The Pathfinder, the Ford Explorer, the Kia Sorento, the Dodge Durango all moved towards unibody construction. The Nissan Xterra, the Chevrolet Trailblazer, and the entirety of Isuzu's and Hummer's lineups all killed by either high gas prices or GM's bankruptcy. But some car companies, like Toyota, saw the potential of the off-roader. With most of the competition gone and Jeep raking in the dough with their four-door Wrangler Unlimited, they took their longtime truck-based SUV, the 4Runner, and aimed it from being a suburban mom cruiser towards being a cool off-roader. The gamble and patience paid off, as the now dedicated off-roader saw sales it hadn't seen since the late 1990s. The 4Runner has become one of Toyota's longest-lasting nameplates in the United States. It came about as the Land Cruiser began to grow and move up market in the burgeoning SUV and off-roader market craze. While companies like Isuzu would dive headlong into the market with models like the Trooper, Toyota would dip their toes by licensing conversion kits to turn their pickup trucks into little two-door SUVs through American motorhome manufacturer Winnebago. The Trekker was available through special order at Toyota dealerships, as they'd import a cabin chassis truck to avoid the chicken tax to said dealer, ship it to Winnebago in Iowa where they installed the fiberglass back and interior, and return it to said dealer. While a cool rad era vehicle, the 1981-83 Toyota Trekker was a crude, expensive option that only sold around 1,500 in the States. When the Hilux truck line was redesigned for 1984, Toyota saw the influx of smaller SUVs as the go-ahead to offer their own. The Chevrolet S10 Blazer, the Jeep Cherokee XJ, the Mitsubishi Montero, and Ford Bronco 2 all appeared in 1984 as cheaper and more maneuverable options over the big American bobtail SUVs. Toyota would also hit the market of May of 1984 with their own offering, the first-generation 4Runner, known as the Toyota Hilux Surf back home in Japan. While they were a step up from the fiberglass Trekker, they were still pretty crude as they were still essentially pickup trucks with an open top and a seat in the back. All first-generation 4Runners had a fiberglass top like a K5 Chevy Blazer or Ford Bronco, and they weren't exactly known for being the safest vehicles in a crash. From the dashboards forward, they are identical to their pickup counterparts as they were mechanically. Like their pickup truck counterparts, the 4Runner was redesigned for the 1989 model year. Still mechanically identical to the pickup, the 4Runner and the Hilux Surf got significant upgrades to improve on-road drivability. Gone was the removable fiberglass top, in was a complete steel shell and the addition of a four-door model. The four-door was so popular, the two-door's sales immediately tanked and was phased out of the American market by 1992 before being dropped altogether in May of 1993. However, the 4Runner was still panned by safety experts and pearl-clutching moms due to, well, its still continued lack of safety. After 5 years of development, the third generation was introduced for 1996, and moved the 4Runner upmarket with the focus on said suburban moms due to the smash and success of the Ford Explorer and the Jeep Grand Cherokee. While sharing many components with the newly introduced midsize Toyota Tacoma pickup truck, it sat on its own platform and was by far the most comfortable 4Runner to that point. Sales would hit an all-time high in 1997 with 100,496 4Runners sold in the United States. Sales would continue in the six digits until 2001, but an all-new fourth generation would be introduced in 2002 that would continue the suburban-focused yet capable theme of the 4Runner. Sales would break into the six figures from 2003 to 2006, but they began to dip in 2007, before absolutely tanking during the recession and in 2009 with just 19,675 sold. So, then came the 4Runner you see here today. Toyota saw the writing on the wall for the suburban-focused body-on-frame SUV, and the fifth generation would instead aim towards the then niche enthusiast market. The Highlander crossover would grow to essentially fill the third-row midsize suburban mom gap in Toyota's lineup, and the 4Runner would instead become a dedicated off-roader once again. Yes, people still buy non-off-road focused ones, but some people still see the cachet in a proper SUV. But the 5th gen, chassis code N280, would benefit from the bottom absolutely falling out of the enthusiast SUV market, with brands like Hummer going the way of the Dodo, and the Nissan Xterra not really getting any major updates until its eventual demise. Toyota only really had the Jeep Wrangler to contend with, and sales would slowly climb upward again when gas became cheap and people started getting outdoorsy again. Initially, the off-road focused trim for the 5th gen was simply known as the Trail, later being renamed the TRD off-road package in 2017 when Toyota realized that the TRD badge still carried a lot of weight, and proved that yes, it's indeed a proper off-road package. It has a proper part-time four-wheel drive system where shifting comes via an actual lever instead of a knob or a button, a lock-and-rear differential, crawl control, and straight out of the platform mate the Lexus GS470 kinetic dynamic suspension system, which would electronically change the shock settings depending on what terrain setting you'd select. A TRD Pro package would be introduced in 2015, which upgraded you to Bilstein shocks and additional skid plating. But this niche vehicle would gain in sales every year until finally breaking six figures once again in 2016, and comfortably selling around 130,000 each year since 2017. Toyota's long game gamble had finally paid off, and the niche off-roader was once again a smashing sales success. Underneath the hood is the only available engine since 2011, the 4-liter 1GR FE V6, which produces a modest 270 horsepower. The V6 is hooked up to the Aisin A70F ECTI 5-speed automatic before splitting power with the Aisin VF2A 2-speed transfer case. Stock axle ratios are 372 to 1, low range is 2.566 to 1, while the final crawl ratio is 33.7 to 1. Up front is a traditional independent suspension with coilover dampers and upper and lower control arms, while the rear is a solid rear axle suspended by coil springs and a 4-link. Minimum ground clearance is an acceptable 9.6 inches, and the approach and departure angles are impressive 33 degrees front, 24 degrees rear. Stock tires were the P265-70R17 Dunlop Grand Trek AT20s, which are around 30.6 inches tall, while upgrading to the TRD Pro got you 31.5-inch Nitto Terra grapplers. Now, I can pretty well compare this to the last vehicle I reviewed, which was the Jeep Gladiator. Try as Jeep claims it's not, it's pretty much a pickup Wrangler, and driving impressions directly compare. Despite this 4Runner being lifted 2 3/4 inches and having mud tires, I can tell you for a fact that the 4Runner is a lot nicer to drive on the street. Yes, it's still truck-based, but the independent front suspension does a great job of soaking up the bumps, and the steering is a lot more direct compared to the Jeep's lazy feel. And yeah, the Jeep was a soft top, but the Toyota is a lot quieter and nicer inside, despite being a decade-old design at this point. To me, the 4Runner is simply a nicer vehicle to live with every day. The Jeep, even dressed up as a wonderfully wacky Gladiator pickup, has ancient driving dynamics on asphalt, and that could be pointed squarely at Jeep's dedication to the solid front axle, which, while admirable in a traditional sense, it comes with a lot of compromises on the street. If you want an off-roader that's actually somewhat nice to drive on the street, the 4Runner is a wonderful alternative to a Jeep. Now, there are a couple of gripes, but they're relatively minor. Despite getting constant updates since its release in 2010, you cannot deny that the N280 5th generation Toyota 4Runner is ancient. This generation is now entering its 12th model year, and its record sales success in recent years mean that we probably won't get another 4Runner for another few years. Toyota has become very conservative since the mid-aughts, and they have the tooling well paid off for this generation. If it's selling in record numbers carried by the higher level TRD off-road models and the platinum luxury models, why would Toyota care to do any major shakeups? Unfortunately, it still feels like a decade-old vehicle in some spots. The interior is decent, and I would argue it's still better than Jeep's much more recent interior, but it's still not up to today's standards in many aspects. Another spot that I focused on was the thin doors. They just feel cheap for something that costs almost $40,000 when new, and that's not considering the insane resale prices that these things have garnered in the last couple of years. Anyways, enough ranting. This particular 2018 Toyota 4Runner TRD Off-Road comes courtesy of Lexington, North Carolina car vlogger George the Car Guy. You may remember him from the W204 Mercedes C300 from episode 68. While he enjoyed that car, he didn't exactly mesh with it like he had hoped. He much enjoyed it over his Charger, and it ended up not being the car for him. Shortly after I filmed the C300, he went on a 2-week trip to Utah where he rented a TRD off-road 4Runner much like this. He absolutely fell in love with it, especially its stock capability, and he soon purchased the one you see here not long after he returned. He's made some upgrades. He installed a 2021-esque aftermarket grille that he's not exactly happy with the quality of, as you can see by the lettering in it, and he plans on installing an actual 2021 factory one soon. He upgraded the fog lights and headlights to LEDs, put a Stage 1 Eibach lift kit in it which lifted the front 2 3/4 inches and the rear 1 inch, Freedom off-road upper control arms, and upgraded the stock Dunlop tires to 285/70 R17 general tire grabbers. Overall, he's much happier living with the 4Runner over his Mercedes, as it fits his outdoorsy lifestyle a lot more. And he can take his black lab with him now without worrying about tearing up the leather in the Mercedes. Overall, despite its age, the Toyota 4Runner TRD Off-Road is a much better purchase as a daily driven off-roader over a Jeep Wrangler. Yes, the Jeep is nice and it will carry you just about anywhere, but you give up so much in day-to-day livability over a 4Runner. The 4Runner is almost as capable, and its driving dynamics don't feel like something from the 1970s on city streets. Even with a mild lift, the 4Runner just felt a lot more planted compared to the Jeep. There was hardly any body roll, and most of the noise came from the aftermarket tires. Unfortunately, inside, despite being nicer than the Jeep, it still does feel like a decade-old SUV's interior. But here's hoping that new competition from Ford and the Bronco push Toyota to update this now 12-year-old platform more than just keep on updating the tech. The 2018 Toyota 4Runner TRD Off-Road is an elder statesman in the off-roader market, but it's still a very good truck. If you can find one at a good deal, get one. But boy oh boy, there's a reason that they've held their value, in spite of the interior. These are well-built vehicles, and I'm glad that grumpy old conservative Toyota has stuck to their guns and kept the 5th generation Toyota 4Runner in production. Turns out, they were right. Americans do love their off-roaders. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you once again for watching another episode of Wookie Drives. Huge shout out to George the Car Guy. I brought him up earlier, but he's been quietly working on his craft, and he was gracious enough to supply the drone footage for this video. He's a really good guy, and go ahead and give his YouTube channel a watch. If you have a car or truck you'd like to see on the show, and you happen to live in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, feel free to email me at wookiedrives@gmail.com. That's right, submit your card to wookiedrives@gmail.com. Be sure to follow the official Facebook page for channel updates. Follow my Twitter and Instagram for Wookie rants, raves, shenanigans, and car spotting pictures. Follow my TikTok for random small videos that would randomly appear at the race shop or in life or whatever that I just feel don't fit on the main channel. Feel free to give this video a like, drop a comment, share with all your Toyota 4Runner friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more Wookie drives like these. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good day.
Hey, I got bit by a snake.
C'est pas poison.
Poison?
C'est pas poison.
Okay, oh wow. Okay, yeah, I feel that.
C'est pas poison.
That's definitely poison.
Apparently, I'm immune to venom.
Immune to venom?
Steve.